Welcome to the Spirit-Centered Business Podcast, where we blend the spiritual with the practical for supernatural results. Now, here's your host, Bralynn Newby.
Hello there. Welcome to Spirit-Centered Business. I'm here with Jon George today, a brand new face for Spirit-Centered Business. I'm excited to introduce to you guys. And here's my housekeeping. You guys are probably used to this by now, but go over to spiritcenteredbusiness.com, catch that business assessment if you'd like to know the trajectory of how your business is spirit-centered or not, making sure that you're established in the heavenly realms and all of that good stuff that the Lord has for your business. That's over on spiritcenteredbusiness.com. And of course, you can watch all the shows there on the podcast and check out the store. There's other stuff going on over there, also some free stuff in the store if you're just looking for little tidbits. So without any further ado, Jon, this is really cool to have you here. Thank you for agreeing to just jump on with me.
Absolutely. A pleasure to be here.
Good. So you have the Cottage Gardens in Newberry, Florida, and you do all of these gorgeous landscaping designs, and you grow all of the stuff that goes on them. And I'm astounded by the beauty that you bring to the world. But I've also heard some cool miracles that happen in your business or that have happened around. And that's why I wanted to bring you on the show. For the audience, Jon and I are part of Terry Spencer's groups, and sometimes we cross paths over there. I don't get to join all that often, but when I do, it's always a pleasure to see Jon on there and hear his stories. So Jon, why don't you tell the peeps about your journey and into the kingdom age, out of the churchianity stuff and into the kingdom. I want to hear this story too, because I haven't heard it.
Well, I'll start even a little earlier than that.
Sure.
Because the journey into getting into business was also an adventure. And I think people might be interested in that.
Oh, perfect.
Because even though we grow a lot of plants and then we design, we have people, I have helpers, and we do all sorts of digital imaging. So people can actually walk through their landscape in 3D space.
So
and
cool.
And so just only limited by the imagination. So it's amazing. And then we have a in-house team that puts these gardens together and curates them and even takes care of them afterwards if needed. So how did I get into this occupation? It didn't start out this way. Mm-hmm. My degree is in cross-cultural studies and theology, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
So as a young person, I always geeked out on plants. I was always the one, you could find me outside with the birds and the butterflies and the plants. And I just had a huge vegetable garden on the side yard. And my dad would help me build greenhouses over Christmas break. Those were my best Christmas presents. Wow. Were greenhouses built with Dad. He was a builder. Mm-hmm. Great memories. And so everywhere I traveled and worked, so I took that theology degree and cross-cultural degree, and I wanted to get out and change the world. My traditional church upbringing was like, well, the next track is to go to seminary and become a pastor with one of the traditional denominations. But I felt another tug. I had already had an encounter with Holy Spirit at age 17, where one of my legs was shorter than the other, and it grew out miraculously. Wow. And so I didn't know a lot about Holy Spirit or anything supernatural, but I just wanted to find out more of where that came from. And the other encounter I had with Holy Spirit was love. I encountered more love in that healing session, and I didn't realize it at the time, but it was a kind of filling of the Spirit. I saw light dancing all around me, and I experienced more love. In that moment, I knew I was not just a social security number in the sky. I knew, that I was loved, that He loved me, and that He wanted good things for me, which I had not fathomed before. So that set me on a journey. And instead of just going off to university, I really said, I want to get out. And I had been on a summer missions experience to France. We had a cousin over there that hosted us all summer, and I loved France. So I was like, I want to get out and go to another country, learn another language. So I was accepted into a school that taught theology and history and music and language, but they only allowed us to speak French. And so it was an
Ooh,
immersive experience.
immersion.
And so
Wow.
while I was there,
That's a little nerve-wracking. I'm feeling a little bit of blood pressure rising.
it was sink or swim.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the fun thing, is like, it's sort of like in pursuing God, in pursuing Yahweh, it's been this like, well, are we going to jump in the deep end together? And it's been a series of sink or swim moments.
Wow.
And then he's always been there for me. So here I was, right, and I almost didn't make it because I had a struggle learning the language and taking college courses, but he helped me through. And I figured out while I was there, he was like, hey, you came here for other reasons, but would you be willing to do this for me? And I was like, ministry? What? Are you crazy? Like, I'd had relatives in ministry and I had grown up in church, and I did not really want to be a part of it. And I said, well, I'll do this ministry thing and I'll pursue this track if you do two things for me. One is, I don't want to be poor and begging for money all the time. I've seen so many ministries and missionaries always like wondering where the next meal is coming from. And I said, two, and now I realize he answered my prayer in a roundabout way that I did not expect, by leading me into business later. But, and then two was, I said, I want to see the power to have lives changed. Yes. I had seen powerless Christianity, and I wanted to know God's power to see people's lives really change, really encountered, just like I had encountered him when I was 17 and healing my leg. And I was like, that changed the trajectory of my life. So if other people could have that encounter, then wouldn't it change the trajectory of their life too? And so it was good. So then I ended up going, I was like, I can go anywhere in the world, because I grew up in Florida. That's where we have our business now. Mm-hmm. And I never thought I would end up back here. And I could tell you that story, but I said, I can go anywhere in the world. So I went to Minnesota, and my parents' denomination, their church sponsored a college, Bethel College near St. Paul, Minnesota. And so I transferred there.
Do you know, I went to St. Olaf in Northfield.
You're kidding.
No,
that's a stone's throw.
Uh-huh.
In fact, I think it's the same network.
I probably.
We played you guys in football.
Oh, man. I wasn't there long.
Well, I finished up my degree there, but
oh, wow.
but I was just itching to get out and change the world. So I did a radical step, and I went with a youth with a mission training school. Everybody else was accepting jobs, and I was like, I'm going to go learn how to change the world. And actually, in that discipleship training school, I learned more in less than a year than I did, I think, in 4 years of university. Wow. Because it was so applicable, this whole learning by doing, because we learned how to do things like pray and relationships and the power of God. We learned about things, and then we instantly applied them. And that's a whole move now, right? With Joe Rogan and all these other people saying trades people, like let's focus on actually applicable jobs instead of just, pie in the sky, degrees that may or may not lead to anything. So I was wanting to get out and change the world. So we went and we did an outreach in Hong Kong, and I was borrowed over to a group that did work with drug addicts, with heroin addicts. And so I joined them. And again, God tapped me on the shoulder and said, would you come back here and help these Chinese drug addicts, heroin addicts? And I was like, wow, yes, I will. So less than a year later, I was back and working, hardcore. These were guys that were coming off of years of heroin addiction. And in our program, it was all spirit led. So they would come into a newcomers meeting. They would hear some worship. They would receive a prayer language instantly. They would instantly have relief wash over their body. Like if they were, jonesing for a fix, they would instantly have relief. And then we would come over and they would say, this is so wonderful. We would come over and lay hands on them. And we were like, would you like more of this? They were like, yes, please. We were like, well, this is Jesus. This is the Spirit of Jesus. Would you like to accept him?
Wow.
And so it's all backwards because they'd already received a tongue. They'd already received a prayer language. They're already receiving healing in their body. And then they mentally agreed to receive Jesus into their hearts.
That's amazing that they got their prayer language before they even received Jesus. That's so cool. Wow. I never even thought about that being a thing like that could happen. That's amazing. So how did you get around the communists like shutting Christianity down, or wasn't it as bad then?
Actually, we were looking forward to China assimilating Hong Kong. So we were actually getting the believers there ready for that assimilation.
Wow.
And so, yes. And so that was a big deal. And
Oh,
all the
wow.
way leading up to that time period. So the church was really getting ready to go underground. And that was part of that whole movement. So we had small groups where we would, the Hong Kong government loved our mission, St. Stephen's Society, so much because we had a success rate like no one other. So they would give us like these rundown properties that we would fix up for just a very small amount of rent per year. And they would say, if you're rehabbing our citizens, here, have this property and this property. And then we would move in and have like 20 or 30 people that were detoxing. And so during this time of detox, it would be a period of 4 or 5 days. And we would do prayer watches on them and take 4-hour shifts. And so the instructions were, you were to pray with the patient or the detoxing person. And if they woke up in pain, like with spasms, then we were to say, remember the prayer language you received at the newcomers meeting? Yes. Okay, we're going to pray like that. We're going to pray in the Spirit, pray in tongues, and then you're going to feel better. And they always would. They'd always fall back in bed, sleep it off. The pain would go away. And we did this over and over for 4 days straight. But the instruction was, when we were doing the prayer watch with them, we were to pray in the Spirit for 4 hours straight. So I had some amazing encounters with God
Oh
in
my
these
gosh.
night hours.
Wow.
It was very intense, and I ended up burning out. Because I was chased by drug addicts. They stole money from our organization. They set up a little alternate mafia that was then chasing me. And I had a word that came in and said, your life is in danger. Get out now. And I gave my 2 weeks and I was out of there very quickly because I knew I was being pursued by the Chinese mafia. So that was like an epoch of missions that I was in full gear. I was, speaking Cantonese with all the 9 tones. I was translating, I was teaching Bible courses. I was helping lead, first and second stage and all sorts of, and we also did gardening there. So to teach the guys how to rehab, I led a gardening program because I had always gardened all my life and enjoyed. When I went to France, I studied Monet's gardens. When I was in Hong Kong and Japan, I studied all the Asian gardens and the temple gardens. And we lived on an island, and we bought seeds in from New Zealand and sprouted them and then shared with the villagers. It was a whole outreach. And then the guys learned how to garden and how to work their frustrations out in the garden. So this became a base for me of like, I can do this. And I had a green thumb.
Obviously. I love the working frustrations out in the garden. I totally get that. Yeah. Especially I like heavy equipment, so I like to work the tractor. I'm like, I need to move a dirt pile right now. Let's just dig
Very
into it.
satisfying.
It is.
Really getting something accomplished, right, Bralynn?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I came home though a broken person.
Oh,
Looking back now, I had, post-traumatic stress disorder for sure,
oh,
because I had been beat up and almost drowned, and it was one of those. I look back like I felt like I had adventures of the Apostle Paul in a very short time period. But
wow.
then when I came back home, I wanted just to hide out. I didn't want anything to do with anybody. And I had some people from my local church scrape me up off the floor, bring me to their home, and just do massive like detoxing in the spirit. And it was a lot of inner healing.
Mhm.
But here by this time I spoke 3 languages. I had all kinds of, I did inner healing, we did deliverance, we did, theophostic, we did, I mean, every kind of modality of healing, because it was the British circuit. So everybody in the UK that was renewed Anglican or on the spirit-filled circuit came through and taught us everything that they knew. So I
Wow.
was just loaded and just like, I'm ready to go. What country next am I going to go to and help change the world?
Mhm.
And nothing. Heard nothing for an entire year.
And so how old were you at this time?
I was later in my late 20s, probably
Okay.
like 27, 28.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Wow.
And so, excuse me. So all I could hear God say at that time was, garden. You love to garden and you love being with me, and I want you to heal. So I took a year off. My parents graciously let me live in an apartment at their place for 1 year. And all I did was garden and talk to God and heal up.
Mm.
And then I was raring to go. And I said, where am I supposed to go? Africa or Asia again, or Europe where I'd been, and or Latin America, where? And again, it was nothing. So I went to a counselor and I said, a trusted spiritual friend, and I said, what do you think this means? And he said, well, have you ever thought that you're supposed to stay here and do something? And I was like, in Florida, where I grew up? Are you kidding me? Like, I've
Surely
been,
not.
surely you jest.
Right.
And so he was like, pray about it. And so this was the big thing of like, God was saying, indeed, you were going to start a business and you were going to do something you love. And at first, I loved aquariums, and I thought I could set these aquariums up for people and maintain them. And I could really do this as a business. And then I checked into the insurance, and it was really crazy high because of the liability of an aquarium exploding in someone's home.
Oh,
But
wow.
and so I was like, well, what about gardening? And so some friends of mine had some garden work they wanted me to do, and so long story short, everything I touched from that point on, like, just turned into people admiring, and they were like, this garden is touching our hearts, we can't leave it, we want more. And so my friends and my church folks were saying, you've got to do this for a living. And then so I had no money to my name, so I was coming off the mission field. I had spent a year healing up with just a few supporters, so I had probably $50 in my bank account,
Mm.
and a bicycle with a basket that somebody lent me from the church,
Wow.
and a vision to start a business. And even my own mom was like, are you sure you're going to make it, honey? And I said, you know what, if this doesn't work out, I can always go get a job at McDonald's. I'm like,
Yeah.
if all else fails. So I rode the bike from door to door with a basket of flowers. This was the fall. You can plant year round in Florida. And that was the fall of 95. And so I went door to door, and a door would open, and here was a big basket of flowers. And I would say, would you like me to plant all of these plus a lot more in your yard? I can make a garden for you. And that's how I began to develop the first customers. And from the bicycle, I was given an old car, and then from the old car, an old van, and then a truck, and then several years later, the first employee, and then the second employee. And then things really took off when I met and married my wife, Kimberly. And and so, and when she moved from her job, and then we combined our efforts, and the business doubled because I'm the creative, she's the administrative person.
Got it. So did you ever have to do any like training to do landscape architecture or anything?
So here again, this is kind of a backwards way of doing it. So what we would do is I became known in this area for high creativity and using all kinds of plants that I'd had experience with all over the world and seeing if they would grow in our North Florida climate. So the word was out. So the University of Florida would send interns over to intern with us from the UF Landscape Architecture School. So
Oh my
as
gosh.
I began to work with each one of these very talented horticulturalist or landscape architect students, I began to absorb their superpowers.
Oh my gosh. Yay, God. That's amazing.
And so, here it is, 27, almost 30 years later. And, though I don't have the degree, we're very sought after because I do have now people with masters in landscape architecture on staff.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, a very talented person and other designers that helped me put it together. But then I can do everything from start to finish myself because it was like I had to learn from the bottom up.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
So then how this intersects with back to the spirit and your
Mm-hmm.
question. So I wanted to tell your listeners because a lot of people are praying about getting into a business or starting a business. And I can, as you know, being an entrepreneur is not for the faint of heart.
Right.
But, so one of my mottos was whatever it takes. And one of the things that I did was I have a vision to become a designer and to design these landscapes full time. But until I do, I'm going to sweep people's, front porch. I'm going to mow their lawn. I'm going to do anything it takes to pay the bills to get there. So I'm not just going to sit on my rear and wait for the check to come in. The other thing is that one of the spiritual aspects, and I brought this over from Hong Kong and seeing the power of God, was I would spend hours a day jumping on the mini trampoline and praying in tongues. That
Oh my
that
God.
releases a lot.
Yeah, that's funny. I guess I don't pray in tongues out loud when I'm jumping on the trampoline, but I definitely am worshiping and yeah, I can.
Commuting, yeah.
Wow.
So,
Cool.
so that and honestly, that I'm actually an introvert, even though I love talking to people one-on-one. But if you put me in a crowd, I'm an introvert. I go find the corner to talk to one person.
Me
So
too.
going and you understand that?
Unless I'm speaking, then I'm good.
Exactly. Then you can.
But
Then we can become the other.
Don't corner me and don't come after me in the corner. Like, oh, then I got to run to the bathroom.
Right. So and so I was honestly petrified of going and asking people if I could do work for them or building the business. Like, how do I do this?
Right.
And so that's why I would jump and pray and really ask God for open doors because I did not have the wisdom or the gumption or just even the fortitude to go make things happen. I was not a natural mover and shaker, but I knew the one who was. So, that was like, okay, you're going to open the doors, and he has. And so that was just something I thought would encourage your audience because there's a lot of unknowns, but if God's putting the pieces together, he will open the doors.
That's so good.
And then the other thing that was really awesome and funny and terrifying was I decided at one point, several years in, maybe 5 years into the business, I was like, I know you have me going back into ministry. So I'm going to take every Wednesday and I'm going to set my business aside and I'm going to fast and pray. I had my Bible out. I was kneeling by the sofa. I'm going to fast and pray and wait for directions. And again, here's what happened was I was waiting on the Lord and a proverbial, and it was very real to me, but it was in the spirit, a bolt of lightning came down and hit my thumb. And my thumb was on fire. And I was like, what? Oh no, like, what are you doing to my thumb? It was burning. It was like on fire. I was like trying to put the fire out. I was like, what are you doing? It was like being zapped with his power and his electricity. And the only thing he said was, I have given you a green thumb. Now use it.
Ooh. Oh my gosh.
So I was like,
John, that's
okay.
amazing.
So that's like, okay, ministry is going to happen as I go because you're taking care of that. I don't understand. I really had to let go of that identity. Maybe people understand this, of being ministry boy or missionary boy. I really had to let that persona go because it had taken a lot of courage to go do that. And then to separate myself from that and say, you know what, finding the next best plant for my area is the call of God on my life. And that is the kingdom right now. And I
Wow.
had to be okay with that and actually find joy in that. But I joyously was able to jump in and say, there's no hesitation. I'm not like just waiting for something else to happen. This is the something.
Oh, that's so good.
So that was big old life lesson. And so your question about how, going from church age to kingdom age. So this has been such an amazing process, and so many stories. I'm just trying to pick out which stories, because the next adventure. So after meeting and marrying my wife, and yes, I could see you're about to say something.
Well, no, I just was thinking in segment 2, we can hear more of those stories. So it's all good. It's all good. Keep going.
Awesome. But the next assignment that Father had for my life. So by this time I'm married, everything's going well with the business, and we are wanting kids. We are wanting children. And we tried for years. It was almost 7 years that we tried having children. All the fertility treatments, we considered adoption internationally. We went through all the steps and a lot of heartbreak.
Mm.
So finally, a social worker that we knew, dear Christian person, said, she goes, I know of 3 siblings. They all seem highly adoptable. The parents are losing the parental rights. They live nearby, and nobody will take in all 3 at once. But if you and Kim, if you guys are willing to take all 3 children in at once, there's a good chance that you could adopt them and they could become your new family.
Oh my
And
God.
so we gulped, said a prayer, and in 2 weeks decided we're gonna, our little Hunter, a preemie right out of the hospital, Sierra 2.5 still in diapers, and Caitlin, a terrified 4.5-year-old who had been moved 7 times to different foster homes before she came to us, and did not even know how to sit at a table and have a meal with us. So we brought them all in 2008, and we knew because of what God had spoken to us in so many ways that they were our children, even though all the social workers were like, you're just fostering them. We were like, yes, and we believe they're our kids. So it was a 2-year process to adopt them. But in that first year, though, very intense. It turned our lives upside down to have so many high need, kids from hard places is now the term, but such the kids that were so broken and so needy. And so then in that first year, we realized Kim was pregnant.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
And we find out in her 3rd trimester. So because she was so engrossed with the children. So we find out, and the technician who's doing the ultrasound says, I see a baby, and this baby's almost fully formed. In fact, in 2 months, you're going to have her, and surprise, it's a girl. We almost fell out of our chairs, but we were so happy. We were in tears. We were like, we always have wanted a baby. We have 3 we're adopting at home, but yes, bring it on. So that was instant family, 4 kids in 1 year. And then just 1 more as a nice surprise, because they said we'd probably never have children again.
Wow.
So that's been the last 15 years of just intense focusing on them and their needs. and their well-being, and learning all kinds of things about how to parent through that.
Wow.
So we've become, I believe, now a resource for loving children from very hard places, because it is not easy, and it is not a walk in the park.
Yeah.
So all the while we're growing, we're bursting out of a little model home, little 3-bedroom home in a planned community. We're just bursting out, and we're needing more room for the children. We're needing more room for the business. We were renting warehouses to house everybody. And by this time we had about a staff of 15 people. And so Kim was researching, excuse me, on the internet, and found a beautiful little 15-acre piece that had an old horse barn and a big mobile home at one end. And so, long story short, we ended up moving our entire family into that mobile home with the hope to build one day on the land. And then we remodeled the horse barn into our studio so that we can have clients come in and we have grow all these beautiful things to show them. And we do the, presentations with the computer modeling, and they can walk through their gardens digitally. And this is where this is happening.
Wow. That is so cool. And that's in Newberry, Florida.
That's in Newberry, Florida, very close to the Gainesville area. And you mentioned Ocala. That's only about 45 minutes away from Ocala in north central Florida.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Very cool. Chris Carter's over there in Gainesville now.
Yes. Chris
Do you
Carter
know
is a
Chris?
great friend.
Christopher?
Yes.
Oh,
yes,
good.
He comes to our farm on a regular basis.
Oh.
He and his wife, Melissa, were actually just here last night, sitting under our big pole barn and looking at the view, and we did a little ascension with them.
Oh, nice. How is he doing?
He is actually looking amazing.
Oh, good.
It was his first trip out since, other than doctors and hospitals, but he was like, I've got to get out and see some of God's creation.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, he's amazing. And I love Melissa and the kids as well.
Yeah. So we have fence lines blooming with wildflowers. We have growing areas where we have a display garden we're building with a pergola. We have window boxes at this old barn overflowing. So it's a very creative space. And maybe in the next segment, I can tell you some stories from the barn, because it also is a meeting place where we meet clients, but also have some spiritual communities that are meeting and seeking Father together and knowing Yahweh. And it's really a very special place.
Oh, very cool. Well, let's leave that cliffhanger for this part one, because I love that. Stories from the barn. That'll be the second segment. That'll be really good. Okay, you guys, if you loved this and you love the story, please share this with your friends. Like, subscribe, follow wherever you're listening or watching. We so appreciate your support, and we definitely pray for you. So thank you for spreading the good news of Spirit-Centered Business and the good news of Jon George and Cottage Gardens, Inc. And you can find him and check the show notes. This will be in there too, but it's thecottagegardens.com.
Actually,
Gardener. Thecottagegardener.com. And I'll make sure that they put it correct in the show notes and on the banner here. So thecottagegardener.com. All right, you guys, until next time, stay spirit-centered. Peace out.
Hey there, SCB peeps. I want to give a huge shout out and deep appreciation and thanks to Candace Benton. She has become a super sponsor for the Spirit-Centered Business Show. So I would appreciate you helping me in sending blessings and abundance back to her. Thank you so much, Candace, and you are well loved.
Thank you for listening to Spirit-Centered Business with Bralynn Newby. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. The next stage of doing business by being spirit-centered is coming together in collaboration, working with spiritual principles and knowing our destiny. Join our tribe at spiritcenteredbusiness.com, and we'll catch you on the next broadcast. Peace out.